I make this savory chicken pot pie from scratch at least once a month for 3 good reasons. 1, there's so much more chicken, it's easy, and there's a lot less salt. You can definitely buy pre-made pie dough, or you can follow these instructions. I will have a small video for the pie dough up on the channel soon, but as you can see, once you put it all in the food processor, you just pull it all together, and this takes literally 5 minutes. Roll it and then cover it with some cling film while you do the filling and set it aside. I don't actually even put it in the fridge, I just set it aside on the counter. But you can definitely use store-bought pie dough. I start off by cutting my vegetables. So I have kind of 6 vegetables that I stick to. For sure I add carrots, and I chop them into the same size as I chop my potatoes. They're about the same thickness, so they're gonna cook at the same rate. My goal is always to have as much vegetable as I have chicken, not the other way around. So I make sure that I have an equal amount of chicken to vegetables. So I've done carrots, and I did potatoes and celery. I use red onions because they give a bit of a sweeter flavor to the entire dish. By the time you've sauteed all the vegetables, the red onions have melted away. I also add these sweet mini red peppers that I find gives the entire mixture a hint of sweetness and a hint of pepperiness. Of course, garlic. What's a dish without garlic? There's no need to make it overcomplicated, so I mix all of my vegetables together before I start sauteing them. Once they're all well combined, I put a skillet onto the stove with about 3 tablespoons of neutral oil. Once it's heated up, I add all my vegetables right into it. There are a lot of vegetables, so I add a decent amount of black pepper and salt at this point. Not enough for the finished product, but enough to get it going. The salt is also going to help with the cooking process. So I let it saute for about 5 to 8 minutes. Once I see the caramelized bits, I add chicken broth to the entire mixture. So now it's boiling and the potatoes and the carrots are going to soften right up. I pre-cooked my chicken in an Instapot and I just set it to go for 27 minutes. I wasn't kidding when I said my pet peeve is not having chicken in a chicken pot pie, so I make sure that there's loads and loads of chicken in my chicken pot pie. Oh yeah, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I'd love to see you more often. It's time to create a bit of a gravy into this mixture. Once your potatoes and carrots are cooked through, I add water and some flour, make a slurry, and pour that right over. And I continue to mix this up until the flour is cooked through, which is about 3 to 5 minutes. Continue pulling from the bottom to the top so all of that mixture hits the skillet. I'm constantly tasting the mixture to make sure that it's on point, and I found that this needed a little bit more of a chicken flavor, so I added another couple of teaspoons of chicken bouillon powder. A little creaminess doesn't hurt, so I add a little bit of 10% cream at this point. We're at another tasting point, so I realized it needed a little bit more salt. I added some black pepper as well, and my secret ingredient is always tarragon. Fresh tarragon I find works the best, but I have used dried tarragon as well. It's time to taste the mixture, and if you're using homemade chicken broth, you might not have just quite enough salt in the mixture, so it doesn't hurt to taste it, and you can adjust it at this point to your personal preference, so let's taste. I think there's just enough salt in this particular mixture. Now we're gonna let this mixture cool for 10 to 15 minutes until it's cool to the touch, and the reason for that is that we have butter in our pie dough, and if we put a warm mixture into the pie dough, it's gonna melt away at the pie crust. So we're gonna let this cool down before we assemble our pies. Now that the filling is chilling for just a moment and cooling down, it's time to fill our pie tin. So I've got my pie dough, my pie tins, and my rolling pin. Let's get to it. The dough has relaxed just enough. It's time to unwrap it and see where we're at. When I push down with my finger, it doesn't spring back. It's definitely ready to go. So now I'm going to divide the dough into the number of pie shells that I'm going to make, about the size of a golf ball. Flour the surface that you're working on generously. Roll your pie dough into a ball in your hand. Flatten it out and roll away. It doesn't matter if it doesn't turn into a perfect circle. It never does. But as you're shaping it into the pie pan, you can adjust it. I do use gobs and gobs of flour as I'm rolling just to prevent the stickiness. If you teeter-totter the pressure on your hands, the pie dough turns around by itself. Your pie dough needs to be larger than the pie tin, and then you gently form it into the tin. You really can make this pie crust as thick or as thin as you like. My pie crust is always thinner in January and February just to get over the Christmas gains. Once you've got the edges over the rim, it's time to roll out the top. So the top only needs to be the same size as the top of the pie tin. Add your cooled mixture to the shell, spreading around all the vegetables so that you don't get one bite where there's a lot more vegetable. Once you have your mixture put in, pat it down so that 1, you don't have too many air pockets, and 2, you don't have too many sharp edges at the top. Lay the lid on top, now pull the edges towards the inside and crimp them together. Continue crimping the entire circle of the pie probably about 2 to 3 times until I have a shape that's relatively the same, with the same size of crust on each of the edges. As long as the top and the bottom, are stuck together, your pie filling should stay inside. Once you're happy with the edge, it's time to make a simple egg wash, which consists of egg yolk and a little bit of cream or water. And I apply a generous layer on top and to the edges, again to make sure that the edges seal together. This step only takes a few additional minutes, but it has 2 separate functions. It keeps the top and the bottom together a little bit more, and it provides for a beautiful top brown, lightly golden crust. If you think you've missed any spots, go back and do it a little bit more because you want that golden brown top. Now bake as instructed. Subscribe for more great ideas. These are freezable.